Great.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today we've got May with us. Hi, May, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And thanks for so much for coming along today to share your story with the listeners and the viewers. Do you want to tell them a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, of course. And I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for creating the space for people to share their voices. Yeah, so my name is May. I was born in China, Harbin. We're very close to Russia. And then I immigrated to Canada, Calgary, Alberta when I was 11. And then I decided to continue my training as a violinist. I, of course, started playing when I was 4 years old, and I kept playing. And then when it's time to decide to where to go to school, I decided to go into music. So I actually moved to Toronto after I went to my undergrad. I went to University of Toronto, and I did a lot of classical music and research on mental health and music there. And then I decided to go to master's in New York because, who doesn't want to come to New York? And one of my biggest thing that I wanted to do was jazz violin. So, my goal was to play at the bar, and I that was one of the first thing I did in New York was actually playing at the Dizzy's Club as a violinist solo for Darcy James Argue's big band. It was an incredible experience. I'm very grateful that happened. And of course, I also did classical there. And then towards the end of my graduation, I was really thinking about what I want to do, and I realized I really wanted to be on the change side of industry. I saw some things that, I was like, I wish it was better. So, how do I do that? I probably need more knowledge. So then I decided to go to NYU for my second master's for their music business program. And I'm very grateful and very happy that I made that decision because now I'm actually graduating in a few months. And I think I have such a clear picture of what I'm good at and what I want to do and what I could do in the future to help with that. So yeah, that's basically a bit of a background about me. Yeah, I'm currently based in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Vanessa May back in the day. She used to play the electric violin amazingly. Who
Oh, wow. Yeah.
ever heard playing it? And it was so amazing. And thank you for what you do on this. And now you've had a unique combination of classical and jazz training. How was that journey, in this diverse musical genres begin? And how has it shaped your musical identity now?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I did classical violin in Toronto, and at that time I was kind of burned out from practicing every day. Kind of really just wanted more inspiration. So I actually went out to some jazz gigs in Toronto. They have a lot of great um, bars, and then a lot of my friends are actually in jazz, and then I loved hanging out with them. So I went to the gig, and I got so inspired. I thought improvisation was this such a great thing, and actually I kind of improvised all along. So then that's when I started hanging out with my friends, and I was like, can you guys teach me? And then they did. And that's when I just really really got into jazz violin because I think with my classical foundation, adding the jazz part and the improvising part very helped me to shape what I want to be. And of course, I think in a way, life is about improvisation as well. So I think you always should be open. Like, when you improvise, you listen to other people first, and then you create your own kind of language, and then you apply that. So I think in a way that really just opened me as a person, and then in a way that you kind of actually have to be curious all the time and really just be receptacle of what other people are saying, and then you embrace your identity and then you say it from your instrument. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my how my more diversified music genres have begun. And then, after I play with a bunch of people, there's other people reaching out to me. So I did a lot of actually folk violin. I did fusion. I did open improv. So I think it's just great to always explore more genres because, you know, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. And obviously, you come from China. You went to Canada, which
Yes.
has a lot of Asian culture there, because I was there just a few weeks ago. Absolutely,
Yeah.
in Toronto, it was beautiful.
Oh, wow.
It's your identity too. Obviously, coming from China, going to Canada, and then going to the US. That's a lot
Mhm.
of changes, and I'm sure that's helped shape your music too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think in China we really had a great, actually my city in particular is very multicultural. So we have a lot of Russian influences, Japanese. I'm from like, Harbin, Manchuria, so very close to Russia. And they also very supportive of arts. Lots of great venues there. And then a lot of artistic activities there. So I was able to play in orchestra when I was in grade 5. So I think that really helped with my musical journey to continue to play. And after going to Canada, of course, they also have great conservatories. So I did kind of still played a lot in orchestra. And then I made the decision to, have a short, everyone's life is short in a way. And I wanted to do something that is meaningful. So I'm happy, living my life. And yeah, and then met lots of great people on the way and lots of great opportunities to perform on really great stages. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
We led on to the next question, actually. So you perform across stages like Dizzy Club, the Apollo
Mhm.
Theatre, and worked on a lot of collaborative projects rooted in improvisation and storytelling. So how do you approach blending the different musical traditions while keeping your own voice authentic, which can be hard?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when I collaborate across genres, of course, like I said, first priority is listening. So every musical like tradition has their own language and phrasing and cultural context. So if I'm working with different genres or different people from different backgrounds, I try to understand the language before bringing in my own. And then, of course, improvisation, it allows everyone to kind of meet in the moment rather than kind of fitting things in a rigid structure. So at the same time, I always try to stay grounded in my own musical journey as a violinist when it comes to both classical and jazz. I think the goal for me is not to blend in into something generic, but I think creating different voices on top of different kind of cultural and languages is more important. And in that way, you can be more authentic in your own voice.
Yeah, and you also completing your second master's now in music business and serve as a student co-president at NYC, which is a lovely achievement to have. How has your academic work influenced the way you approach your career and the music industry? Because it's a great skill to have.
Yeah, so studying at NYU, of course, in the music business faculty, I think is such a privilege because all the professors are so knowledgeable and they are industry people. So learning from them has really helped me to understand things a holistic way. I found myself that in classical conservatories, a lot of things are not always about your future career in the business side. It's more of about, practicing and own your skills. But I think understand the industry as a whole is so important. So, for example, when I'm at NYU, I took um, marketing, strategic marketing in the music industry specifically. I learned about music publishing, sync licensing, artist development, and financial valuation in the music industry, like understanding catalogs, why do people sell them, and how does that work? Where the money goes, where the money flows. So I think if you want to have a very holistic idea, it's so important to understand all aspects, not just focusing on one. I think, yeah, understanding both sides, the creative and the business side, just gives me such a more holistic view and gives me a chance to see what I actually really like, I
Yes, and
would
also
say.
understand the business, how it operates, and how to make that income, right? Because that's
Yeah,
extremely important today.
yes, of course.
I love that. Now your work spans artist relations, event planning, global music conferences. What have been some of the biggest lessons and challenges you faced while coordinating these projects that you've been involved in?
Right, yeah, thank you for this question. So, yeah, for being a full-time student working on all those large-scale music events with Indie Week, which I'm very grateful to be part of. It's an amazing community, and I think we create a lot of value to our industry. We give back what we can offer, right? So, I think for me, just personally, like time managing, right? So I'm also performing, I'm also teaching. I'm also a student, so I think that has been very one of the challenges, I really have to learn how to prioritize things and organize myself better. But when it comes to global conference scheduling, I think, of course, you have to work with different time zones, and there's always unexpected challenges, especially when you're running a live event. If you run live events before, you understand, there's always last minute things that happen. So, but I think one of the biggest thing is communication. It's everything. So, communicating clear expectations and then in a way that you build stronger relationships and people trust you. I think those are the biggest lessons I've learned. Of course, you always have to adaptable. Again, what I said about improvisation, you have to do that all the time with hosting events and running conferences. I think, yeah, like, communication and being able to adapt are the biggest lessons I've learned. Yeah, and I'm still learning, always learning, and
think
I
that's
love doing what I do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I also love the point you mentioned about trust and building trust, because that's
Yes,
extremely important. We're in a relationship business. It's very much
exactly.
about relationships and how you treat other people and how you can help build community. How important has that been for you?
Yeah, so I think. you know, when people trust, you have to establish trust that you have, our industry is so people like, right? It's all based on relationships, like what you mentioned. And I think people trust you when they see that they can rely on you. You don't just make empty promises, you bring things to the table and you're communicative. Like, you cannot just promise one thing and then you kind of go off and then never heard from you. You gotta always keep nudging people. Like you gotta keep following up, keep people in touch, always making sure people are there. I think especially with technology right now, it's so hard to actually have a phone call, before you actually talk to people, but now it's more of emails, right? It looks cold, but you have to learn in a way that to communicate even in the email to be personal. And then I think when people get that, they start trusting you more. And then that's when relationships and then business comes is you do business with people you trust. You don't do business with people you just met. Um,
It's time. It takes time.
yeah.
Trust people.
Yes. Time.
Thank you so much for mentioning these things. They're super useful to the listeners.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate that, May. Now, you touched on sync and publishing. Very, very important these days. Publishing is where you get half of your income from when you're writing a song or you're performing a song. And then
Hmm.
you've got your sync licensing. So can you share your insights into the experience with sync licensing and publishing and how
Hmm.
publishing artists navigate that landscape? Because it's quite complex.
Yes, it is quite complex. So I had a very great professor named Susan Dotis. She was my publishing teacher, and then she is so, thorough with her teaching. I think actually one of the big part of music publishing is people working there is advocacy. You always want to advocate for songwriters because usually artists are in the spotlight, but there's lots of people behind the scenes, especially songwriters, producers. And people need to understand those nuances and really making sure your metadata is correct. You register your pieces, you copyright, go to the copyright office, like, make sure you protect your intellectual property. While, it's kind of really tough right now, with all the AI stuff, no one really knows what's going on. Copyright laws take so long to come out. So I think it's just still important to just protect what you have. And in a way, then, it's easier if there's a sync opportunity, they can find your song, right? If it's correctly tagged, then they can find the correct songwriter, right? A lot of times it's not incorrect, right? And then they can't find who wrote the song, and then your money gets lost, or you lose an opportunity if your song could be licensed on a movie. Actually, sync and licensing is one of the most um,
Lucrative.
powerful revenue stream, right? Because it's kind of usually upfront. And then you can get lots of money in the beginning as instead of like small amounts every month, something like that. Yeah, so I think my advice would be definitely understand your rights and make sure your metadata is correctly tagged and everything is correct, and build relationships with people, like build relationship with music supervisors and like go out to their I don't know, panels, like go out to, if you're able to go to like music festival, like New York Fashion, no, sorry, New York Music Week. There's lots of
Wow,
like music supervisor hangouts. Go talk to them, right? And then you never know what's gonna happen. So I think if artists could be able to do that, that would be better than just co-emailing people, right? Your playlists and stuff like that.
that's great advice. And I think it's also about getting out there and meeting these people, like you said, because
Mhm.
once you've built a relationship and it's non-transactional, you don't go out there and say straight away, okay, you meet a supervisor, here's my music. You build that relationship slowly. And it's not asking for something. You work together, you collaborate, you support each other, you get to know each other first. Isn't that a better way and a healthier way of going around sync placements as well?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so much. Now we're going to
Yeah.
talk policy and digital marketing. So in today's digital world, how do you balance artistry with marketing? And also, what strategies have you found particularly useful when you're marketing your music? Because marketing is massive now. It's a massive
Yeah.
part.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just talking with my former professor. He said something very interesting. He said publicity has changed so much is that it's actually just marketing now. So pu when you say publicity, it is marketing, it's strategic marketing. So it's so digitalized, right? You have to kind of put yourself out there. And of course, people always talk about social media. So you do have to um, you know, um, just throw yourself on social media. It's just how it works now. And I think one of the important thing is storytelling, right? People love understanding what is behind you, like what's behind your music. Rehearsals show background or collaborations and what inspired you, to talk to people directly. I think people really want that authenticity and to connect you through the screen, not just you as an artist, like a persona. They want to understand who you are and how you build that story. Will have people to relate to you. When people relate to something, that's when they will like to follow. And that you get fans, right? Fandom is such a big part. Lots of music labels and companies are investing in fandom and specifically super fandom because lots of money comes from them. That's what helps artists to, keep thriving. So I think it's super, super interesting to think that way. Like you have to cultivate a community of people that would love to follow your journey, not just, one hit, which
Yeah.
happens a lot. And they don't know who wrote the song or who's singing. They know the song, but they don't know who's behind it. So it's super important to put yourself out there, actually talk about what you do, and showing all those things behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I was talking to someone the other day actually about releasing a song. And they said actually on social media, you need at least 60 to 70 different posts around the same track before it should even be released. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's great. It's like a movie trailer, right? They don't just put out a movie right away. They start advertising like a year and they keep putting out different trailers. I think it's the same business model, right? You kind of have to think it that way. You have to tease people, be like, oh, I really want to know this. I really want to hear this, right? And then as when you release, then people actually go listen to it, or you pre-save, right? You want them to pre-save in their playlist. So when it comes out, they can hear it right away.
And would you say cater that specifically to different kind of audiences as well? So, for example, we've got European audience, we've got our American audiences. Do we want to make that personalized for each territory as well?
You're right. And then of course there's different streaming platforms, right? In Europe, I know Deezer is more like in Germany or I think. And then, there's not just Spotify, there's Apple Music, there is Tidal, there's so many different more platforms that artists actually, sorry, I meant audience actually go explore. And there's different social media platform, not just Instagram, not just TikTok. There's, if you want to explore Chinese market, there's Red Note, right? There's so many different ways. Like I think you do have to understand your audience culture, right? There's chart metrics. Look at who's listening to you, right? Personalize your things for different regions. Understand what people are using there. I think it's super, super important.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks for sharing that as well. And let's talk about inclusion and sustainability. Now,
Mhm.
we'll focus on building a more meaningful, inclusive, and sustainable music industry. what does that look like in practice? And, what steps can artists take, and as well as industry professionals, to contribute to that change?
hmm Yeah, that's a great question. I think that was one of the main reason why I really wanted to shift to the business side. I wanted, um, the industry, we're in this together. And I think if everyone in the industry is thinking this way, then we can all elevate this industry into a better place. So building a more inclusive and sustainable industry, I think about creating systems that artists can actually thrive long term, not just short term. And I think that includes fair compensation, especially speaking for classical and jazz. Lots of gigs are not the best paid. I think there should be a better system about helping session musicians to get better paid jobs and, having platforms that help. And of course, better mental health support. Talk about it. It's shouldn't be a taboo. It should be shared. And I think more diverse voices being represented on stage and behind the scenes. I don't know if you watched the Oscars last night.
It's
Wow, like K-pop Demon Hunter. It was just amazing to see all those celebrities like, being like a K-pop fan and then
yeah,
having like Edge and like everyone perform. I think that was historical and they won an Oscar. I think the industry is going towards a great, like more inclusive place already. So it was just very amazing to see, especially also being an Asian woman. I think in practice, it could look like more mentorship programs, equitable hiring practices, or creating space where emerging artists feel supported. And of course, I think one of the big thing is advocate for it, right? Always advocate and then find your community that care about the same thing. When voices come together to advocate more, your voice matters more. So that's what I learned. Um, you know, it's more voices towards the same thing matters more than just one.
values and goals, and as long as they streamline as well, because that's extremely important as well. Working with
Right.
people that have got the same goals and ambitions as you really does help for sure.
Yeah.
It's the talent pipeline, May, and artists up and coming. They're trying to get into the industry. They're trying to build a career. It's quite
Mhm.
difficult these days. What's your thoughts and feelings on that, and advice you could give to artists that are trying to get in that foot in the door?
I think we cover like kind of there's a theme that we could tell is that relationship building is the key to this industry. It matters on who you know and what kind of relationship you have with people. It's interesting because I've been thinking about that recently. Sometimes it takes one person to change your whole career. You don't know who knows who, and always just to be a kind person and you want people to see you as a friend. You don't, and you want to build yourself this kind of trust, like I mentioned, so then more people know about you, and you never know in 20 years who's going to give you a phone call about this amazing opportunity. And you never know who will be your boss. So I think never underestimate anyone around you. You never know. The next day you might need their help and they might need your help. So I think at the end of the day, you just have to be open and get yourself out there, talk to people because no one's going to come to you, be like, can I
Uh,
license your music? Like, can I sign you? No, you have to let people see what you can offer. I think that's the most important thing.
great advice. Thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you, May.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You're an educator as well. So, how do you guide students and emerging musicians to navigate both creative entrepreneurship and industry strategy? So, how do you help artists with that?
Right. So actually I teach a lot of kids for violin. So yeah, and then it's really cute. So my students range from 5 years old to 71 years old. So a large
Ah,
um, gap of ages. And I think it's very interesting when I talk to a lot of adult students. They're actually not music industry people, right? They're just people that want creativity back.
yes.
I think that's a common thing is especially with AI. And then a lot of my students do like they're engineering or they are working in AI. I think they all say something in common. They're like, I need this creativity back, right? So I think people always say, oh, we're so scared about AI being taking over our jobs. I think we should be less scared, especially where if you're in the live industry and if you're producing music, like live. I think people will crave that live experience. So sorry.
Experience itself that people want. That's what they really want, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's just to my students. So I'm love teaching them because I know they want to have this kind of experience. But I also taught at conservatories. I think I always encourage them to, again, stay curious and open. Don't just focus on one thing. I'm going to be just this person, just a violinist, or just I'm just gonna do man booking. I'm just gonna do this. I think nowadays you just have to be open to anything, like do everything, right? And the more you do, the more valuable you are, right? Because in the future, there's are things going to be replaced for sure, right? So you want to expand your knowledge. You want to keep learning. You want to keep exploring things that you could create value to society or to a company you work for.
I really love that. Thank you. And also, you was in the classical and jazz background. Now, being an Asian woman in those kind of atmospheres, it can be quite challenging, right? Because it's not very diverse. How did you
Mhm.
cope with that and push forward for that representation and visibility for your own community?
Right. So, yeah, it was super scary at first. I was in New York. I never went to a jam session before, and someone brought me to a jam session. It was all, a man, and they're all so good, and I'm just this like girl just sitting there. And I think, it's the people around you. Of course, your friend brought you, and I was lucky. There were this band called Brass. I think their name was the Queen of Brass or something like that. But they're a all-woman brass band in New York. They're so cool. And then they were like, "Let's just stand up. Like, I will play with you." You have those kind of people helping you. So of course, you will never be alone in those situations. I think finding a community that supports you is so important. And then from there, you kind of, get this kind of sense of like I don't even think about that anymore. Like you don't think about, oh, I'm an Asian woman. I'm just like, I am a musician. I'm part of this. I'm just gonna do it. At some point, you just do it. You develop this kind of not what's that word I'm looking for? Like this kind of confidence, not com you know what I mean. Yeah, so I would say like find your people first, like to step out your comfort zone, just go. And then as more, again, people know about you, they respect you, they trust you. You don't actually feel you're undermined or anything,
Right.
right?
It takes time, it does, and it is about confidence. I totally agree with you on that one. And
Yeah.
obviously, you talk about improvisation and storytelling. So improvisation is central to your work. How do you see improvisation as a tool for just music, but also for the creative problem solving itself and how it bridges those gaps, to people's songs?
Yeah, right. So when you improvise, let's talk about from music sense. Well, first you actually study it, right? You do have to learn, okay, there's different chords, there's different things, and then you should have a foundation. So that relates to education. Like you should get educated in the things you want to do first.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have the foundation that you can fly. And then you open your ears. So then in the industry sense, that's when you open yourself up, like open your heart, like be authentic, like open, right? I think when people know you're like they can tell right away. When you talk to people, you know who's open and who's not. And of course you would want to keep talking to someone that's very open. So then improvisation part is that you never know what is gonna come out, right? And sometimes it just hit. So, but then you keep trying, you keep playing, and then you listen, and then you respond to other people. And then in the industry side, that same thing. When you're talking to people, you never know what's gonna happen, right? But you listen, you respond with an open heart, and then open conversation. You never know what matches, what just you never know what's gonna be in common with you too, right? So I think it's super interesting to think about it that way. And of course, you will ultimately meet. lots of great people in this way and find your own community of people that supports you. Having your values, share values, and then yeah, and in the future it becomes like a tool for if even if you're in a leadership position, you always want to listen to what your employees have to say, right? It's not like you're in a better position than them. You're working together as a team. You don't create that gap. And I think that's also very important.
Beautiful. Thanks, May. And if the listeners want to connect with you, find out more, listen to your music, how could they do that?
Yeah, so they can follow me on my Instagram. It's at MAYYYYYU and underscores. There's five Y's. You should be able to find me. And I'm also on YouTube. If you search up like May Yu violin, I have some solo works that's posted on YouTube. And yeah, but I'm also on LinkedIn. If you want to search May Yu, MAYYU, I should be able to come up. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to leave all the links in the description below. I want to say thank you ever so much for your story, your advice, your expertise. It's been lovely talking to you, and I
Yeah,
can't
thank
wait
you.
to
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun talking with you. And yeah, and again, I know I did some research on your work. I think you're doing great work. Thank you so much for inviting people that might not be otherwise have a platform to share their thoughts. So thank you so much for that.
what it's all about. It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks, May. I really appreciate your time.
Thank
Thank
you. You too.